Hello guys, NautoAce here, and this will be a rewind thoughts talking about the history of Capcom and SNK collaboration on early 2000s. So I did this video already. I actually did a rewind on my main channel doing commentary on Capcom versus SNK Pro for the PlayStation. Yes, the PlayStation 1, believe it or not, better than nothing because it wasn't released in the West for the Dreamcast, just saying, because by the time that game came out, Dreamcast was already dead in the West, but it is what it is. Anyway, for this rewind, of course, I talk about the collaboration, and of course, I did correct myself that it is only one game. Minimum is the requirement. Anything else during the license agreement, they can do more Capcom versus SNK or SNK versus Capcom franchise, depends on the company is. So with that, I'm gonna play this one more time for the new people, trying to understand why, to some extent, SNK versus Capcom SVCK is sort of important. Not the game itself, because like I said, and I said in multiple videos, the game is bad. It's quirky, it's fun, but it's bad. To some extent, doing this like for a tournament level, not a lot of people probably going to play it, but it has its history, some unique, iconic characters like Mega Man Zero. And of course, like I said before, in the West in 2005, it was only released on Xbox due to, and I said it before, I'm going to say it again, the price issue. And Sony suggests, to some extent, yes, mandatory that they want SNK to sell those 2D games in a lower price. Because to some extent, one, yes, it might look bad for PlayStation during the PlayStation 2 era. But at the same time, they kind of know the consumer will not pay SNK game that's from an AES $50. And they tried that with SVC Chaos. That didn't work, and people were complaining. And of course, Playmore was sort of in Dev's ear on that one. And if you notice, I keep saying Playmore without SNK before that. Yes, in 2005, they are called SNK Playmore. But like I said before, the company itself, Kawasaki, created Playmore after SNK's bankruptcy. And Playmore are the one that's doing some poor decision, barely even making new games, believe it or not. But, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, their last new game under Playmore was King of Fighters 13. And, of course, credit to Metric Muscle about King of Fighters 12. You know what happened to it. It wasn't good. Even so, the graphics is good. The procedure, the development apparently, well, wasn't good. And that's why at 2015, a Chinese conglomerate took over. And there's King of Fighters 14. And then now they're actually making new games. Plus, bringing back classic game to give them another chance, like SNK versus Capcom Chaos, which is surprisingly because, again, they have to work with Capcom in order to release that. It is what it is. Anyway, so I'm going to start this backstory of Capcom and SNK doing collaboration. What's the deal? And like I said, the gist of it really is that with the collaboration came to be, both Capcom and SNK must at least do one arcade game. That's the point. Arcade game. Not console, not Neo Geo Pocket or whatever. At least one for the arcade. Capcom, of course, did Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000 for the Dreamcast or the Naomi board, while SNK did SNK vs. Capcom Chaos using the AES/NVS engine. So it's a very 2D engine game, i.e. the Neo Geo. And that was the deal, at least one. And then from there, they can do either a sequel like Capcom did, or SNK did a Neo Geo Pocket version. They even did Card Clash. And of course, in Japan, they even did a sequel. And then, of course, later on, under Playmore, they actually did SNK versus Capcom Card DS. Yes, for the DS, believe it or not. And I even have it. I got that $10 at Best Buy when it came out like 2 years after on a clearance sale. So I'm surprised about that. I'm happy. Played it, I think, like 5 minutes of it, and I never came back to it. I don't know. At least I have it. I mean, it is what it is there. So anyway, I'm going to play this video, and then later I'm going to give my backstory with the history of the development from Capcom and SNK. Capcom and SNK. What happened if they duke it out in a fight? So there you go. You got the cash from Capcom versus SNK. And starting in 2000, both Capcom and SNK made the game. And the backstory of the deal was both Capcom and SNK are required to develop at least 2 games. It doesn't matter what medium, what media it is, what system it's it for, as long as they have to do 2 games. That's what the contract is. Alright, so I want to make a correction from my rewind there. So like I said, that video was made way in the past. But the correction that I want to do was that in that video I said 2 games for both sides. In actuality, that was actually a mistake. The actual deal for the collaboration are that both Capcom and SNK must at least do 1 fighting crossover game for the arcade. So that's a keyword there, the arcade. And they can do other franchise, other game of the based on the crossover, but they have to at least do 1 game that is for arcade. So in the Capcom side, it's actually Capcom versus SNK Millennium Fight 2000. It was 14 arcade. Of course, there was a Dreamcast version, but unfortunately, that was only in Japan due to the fact that, well, the Dreamcast outside of Japan, well, it sucks if you know the history of that one. At the same time, for the SNK side, was SVC Chaos, SNK versus Capcom. So those are the arcade one. And what happened was in the Capcom side, they said, hey, you know what? This game was good. People liked it. We were getting a lot of praise. So why not do a sequel to it? So they did. And there you go. Capcom versus SNK 2, which is the superior versus the other games. Sorry, but you know it's the truth. And SNK said, you know, we have the Neo Geo Pocket. Why not? Let's make a fighting game titled Match of the Millennium, SNK versus Capcom. And of course, that one, to some extent, what's the beneficial of that? Well, you can play it on the go. I mean, Neo Geo Pocket is actually cool. But at the same time, if you plug it in on the Dreamcast, you actually unlock 2 new characters exclusively. So, yeah, believe it or not, there was some sort of integration with the Dreamcast and the Neo Geo Pocket. But of course, if you follow the Neo Geo Pocket, at some point, they decided to just recall it outside of Japan and just shift it to Japan. Different story there. But yeah, so again, the correction is that the deal was that at least Capcom and SNK do 1 game for the arcade. The arcade. So again, those games are Capcom vs. SNK, Millennium Fight 2000, and SVC Chaos, SNK versus Capcom. Capcom, of course, did Capcom vs. SNK, and then they made an upgrade version for the Dreamcast and the PS1, which is Pro, by adding in 2 new characters. I'll explain that later. And then, of course, Capcom vs. SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium 2001. And for SNK, they did SNK versus Capcom Millennium of the Fight 2000 for the Neo Geo Pocket. And maybe in the future, I'll probably do a showcase on Neo Geo Pocket. I did already, I think, 2 showcase games, and I actually did a showcase on SNK versus Capcom for the Neo Geo Pocket. I'll probably put that in the description. It's going to be in the description, the link. So they did that one, and another one, maybe in the near future, I'll also do this showcase called SNK versus Capcom. SNK's version of Capcom vs. SNK, unfortunately, it really wasn't that good. And I mean, I was still a fan of SNK on support. I really wanted that game. But what happened was that in the PS2 era, it was originally going to be ported to the PS2, but SNK decided not to, made it an Xbox exclusive, because the reason is it was a price issue, and it got me upset about it. And when I emailed SNK saying if there's any way to bring it to the PS2, and they just said nope, no chance. They never did. And a lot of the fans who are a PS2 owner but as an SNK fan, they were upset. And then of course they did rectify that in 2007 because by then the PS3 is out. So they did bring in a lot of SNK games for $15. But that's going to be another story. So once again, for I guess the third time, you heard my story about the history collaboration from Capcom and SNK. So once again, it is required at least one. Capcom did Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000, while SNK did SNK vs. Capcom SVC Chaos. Both of those games actually have some sort of history, and I'm going to give my thoughts here. So first of all, Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000. If you ever wonder why the game's like sort of underwhelming when it comes to the roster, well, apparently according to Capcom at the time, it was underdeveloped. They wanted to release the game, but the budget I think was above mediocre at best from what I understand. All they did was, it is a cut and paste, but with the SNK side, of course, they got to build the characters from the ground up in a Capcom style, CPS 2 style, CPS 3 to some extent. But mainly crossover game, it is a cut and paste. You can really tell. Minus Ryu, Ken, and Akuma, and Bison, and Dan, they have new sprites. I mean, I like that sprite versus the older one, the CPS 2, but that's just me. I mean, I guess it's gotta make sense. Gotta make them look old. Just saying there. Anyway, so the reason why it's sort of underwhelming and underdeveloped, it is, they admitted it, that first of all, the songs, I guess the problem was also, it's probably license issue to some, especially SNK. Like, yeah, it would be nice to have Terry's song from Fatal Fury, King Kyo, Esaka, Iori's, Arashino, saxophone. You get what I'm talking about. And then from the Capcom side, of course, the iconic and historical Street Fighter music. And of course, I did a video on my main channel, what if you can customize Capcom vs. SNK 2 with the proper music. And I'm going to tell you that people do enjoy that. That's why the director and the producer for Street Fighter 6, they finally put in the jukebox mode because of that reason. Because some of the songs they put in, not a lot of people are going to like it, especially something that's really implemented throughout history. You cannot just say, oh, well, we're going to change the music because change is good, which is true. Background-wise, it's Street Fighter. It's King of Fighter. I mean, what else can you do? I mean, granted, Street Fighter 5, you got some cool, interesting background, and same goes with King of Fighters to some extent. But it is what it is there. But the character-wise is they're playing it safe. First of all, like I said, cut and paste. Because when it comes with the Street Fighter characters, come on, it's so easy. You've been playing Street Fighter, so there you go. And then they put in more again, Darkstalker, another fighting game. So, again, kind of makes sense. You have that architect already for the character. I mean, why not put somebody you like, say, from Power Stone? Then that means they have to figure out how to transition a character from Power Stone to whatever for the 2D fighting game. That's why. I mean, yes, it was underdeveloped. And of course, the Dreamcast version was actually better because an integration with the Neo Geo Pocket, for people who don't know, is way to unlock characters in both game. And then you even get like additional credits to unlock stuff for either game, from what I understand. I mean, they did that actually in the West when they actually, to some extent, did that in Japan. So, I mean, it is what it is. They did that actually. Dreamcast had the original Capcom vs. SNK, and of course, SNK versus Capcom Match of the Millennium on the Neo Geo Pocket. They did that connectivity. So, yeah, that was cool there. All right. So, it is underdeveloped, but again, you have to understand to some extent that they are obligated. So, they got to put in the SNK character. That's why it's called Capcom vs. SNK. That's why it's sort of underwhelming with the roster. And of course, like I said, they can do more after that one requirement. And that's why they have the sequel, Capcom vs. SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium 2001. And they did add some more new characters for the Capcom side and SNK. The Capcom side, they added Yoon for Street Fighter 3, Maki, which is somebody new, Eagle, somebody that's never been in a past Street Fighter game, not even in Alpha. Even so, granted, they have moveset, they probably have to modify them, and etc., etc., etc. But yeah, to some extent, why is it just usually just looks like Street Fighter versus King of Fighter? To some extent, that's probably what they're going for. But people wanted like really Marvel, or they want to really like Capcom roster, like an all-star Capcom, kind of like in Marvel versus Capcom 3, which is, you can't deny it, less roster than 2, but they are from different games. So, Beautiful Joe, Okami, Resident Evil, Ghouls and Goblins. So, I'm just saying there. But anyway, back to Capcom vs. SNK. They probably were just playing it safe at a time. But now, again, you never know. Maybe now with a lot of these collaborations happening with Marvel vs. Capcom, SNK versus Capcom vs. SNK, I wouldn't be surprised in the long run. Eventually, maybe there will be a Capcom vs. SNK 3. It is what it is. Now, we're moving to the SNK side. SNK versus Capcom Chaos. So, first of all, the game itself, they are trying to emulate Capcom fighting style, which is 1-on-1, 2 out of 3. Usually, when you think about that, King of Fighter, because again, it's King of Fighter versus Street Fighter. King of Fighter is 3 out of 5. We play 3 different characters. But of course, they do have a 1-on-1 fighting game: Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, World Zero, Samurai Showdown, etc., etc., etc. And there you go. Okay, back to SVC Chaos. One of the questions that people did say, the game is so bad and what's going on. Did they develop this game under obligation? So you got to keep in mind, at a time in 2001, they filed for bankruptcy. So they were developing this game while they were in the verge of bankruptcy. They were hoping this game would actually help them make money. Of course, it didn't. That's why if you notice, the logo was just Play More, not SNK Play More, because it was an obligation for SNK to actually do one. A lot of people did believe, and myself too, that SNK vs. Capcom might have been developed under obligation. They just need to do something. They got to put it up there. And then there you go. Granted, they did, like I said, they did put some unique characters. You got Dimitri. You got Mega Man Zero. There you go. And then Shiki in a 2D design. She's from Samurai Shodown 64. And that game really bombed. Bottom line is SNK, when it comes to 3D games, trying to design them, they're just up to par. I don't think it's bad, but it is what it is. Nobody really talk about Samurai Shodown 64 and its sequel. And again, Shiki and of course Ashura, that's Neo Geo Colosseum. I'll talk about that later. So it was an obligation. Still, Street Fighter versus King of Fighter, and that's what it is. And like I said, the reason to some extent, if you notice in my video, I kind of make sort of poking fun of Playmore, even saying that it took them 19 years to finally put SNK versus Capcom on the PlayStation console, because like I said before, in 2005, it was originally going to be on the PS2. That was one of the games, along with Metal Slug 3. Rumbling was saying that PlayStation, at the time, wanted the game to have a lower MSRP at launch. SNK refused, so they're trying to push a narrative and said, you know what? If you're a true SNK fan, you would buy an original Xbox and this game. Which is false, because again, they were just trying they're trying to be a tough guy that, we're not in the wrong. Of course, in the long run, it was proven that they were in the wrong. And they did talk about that in a different video. So that's why. So that's why a lot of people even say, they're even cool with a PS2 to a PS4 at a time, because SNK were doing a lot of those. But of course, like I said, Capcom also is involved due to the IP. You got to get permission. It is what it is. So now the question is, beside that, it's out of obligation, which is, like I said before, whether you like or not, SNK versus Capcom was developed under obligation when they were in the middle of a bankruptcy. They just have to do it. They didn't have a choice, so they did whatever they could with the budget. I don't know what they have, how much it is. Including myself during the PS2 era in 2005 as an SNK fan. Why are a lot of people upset that it wasn't released on the PS2? Because its competitor, Capcom vs. SNK 2 Mark of the Millennium 2001, was released on the PlayStation 2. And it was also released on the PlayStation 3 as an emulator. And I have it, because at one point they were selling it for $3. Cool. Now I can play it on the PS3. I still have mine. It still works. Yay. It would be cool to put it in the PS4, whatever, how they'll do it. But we'll just have to wait and see. If they're doing a Marvel vs. Capcom collection, I don't think it's going to be that hard logistically with a Capcom vs. SNK, since both company are video game company. Marvel, it's a different medium license. That's why. As an SNK fan, they just want it as a collection. Because at the time, of course, the PS2 era, you don't have digital game or indie game. That's later on with the Xbox, but different story there. They wanted to have it at least for PlayStation 2, like a collection. So they have Capcom vs. SNK 2 for the PlayStation 2, and then SNK vs. Capcom for the PlayStation 2. They can display it, they can hold it, they possess it. It is what it is. And then they said nope, and they were, again, and that's why people were pissed. And that's what, like I said on a different video, that Playmore were just ignoring them. They were literally just ignoring the fans because they really can't do anything about it. So that's the reason why, to some extent, they wanted this game, SNK vs. Capcom Chaos, to be on the PS2 at a time. And they thought the hopes are gone because after a while, Capcom did say, at a time, different management, they didn't want to work with collaboration. It doesn't work until later on. I guess, like I said, new people, especially even this executive, they're changing to say, you know what, maybe we'll be more open. And that's why they did Capcom SNK Collaboration. And in EVO 2020, that was sort of a hint there that there might be something there. It's not just, two company once again are being buddies. There you go. So anyway, that is sort of the extent of the history about this collaboration. So the recap is, one game has to be at least for both sides. Capcom did Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000 for the arcade using the Naomi board, while Playmore SNK did SNK vs. Capcom Chaos using the MVS engine, and then later on the AES. Again, because it has to be in the arcade. There you go. With the Capcom side, to some extent, it was underdeveloped probably due to license, but to some extent, they got better with the sequel. SNK have to do out of obligation, even to have some unique characters, Samurai Showdown, Mega Man Zero, Dark Stalker, Athena, and then, of course, Firebrand. So you gotta give them credit for some unique character. And, of course, you might say, well, SNK vs. Capcom may be bad, but I heard there was some sort of quote-unquote pseudo-sequel to that game. Yes, Geo Battle Colosseum. So for people who don't know, it is their tag team using that Nautilus Wave engine from Sammy. So that game is actually better, and as of right now, you can play it on the Xbox Series XS, backwards compatible, and you think you can still buy it. So there is still a way to play that game. It's just not on a PlayStation. A lot of people want that because not a lot of people are buying Series XS, so it is what it is. Geo Battle Colosseum, like I said, it's a pseudo-sequel because some of the characters from SNK vs. Capcom Chaos are back. So you got Terry, Ryo, Mai, Kim, especially Genjuro, Shiki, Mars People, and Athena. So yeah, the biggest one, of course, is Athena and Mars People are back. And the reason why it's sort of a pseudo-sequel, because like I said, because of the SNK roster, they're back. Of course, granted, some of them are from different games, such as Terry, obviously Mark of the Wolf design, which I prefer that. And then, of course, Ryo, his getup, for people who don't know, is from Buriki 1, which is Neo Geo's 3D game. It's supposed to be a UFC game. One of the main character, Guy Tendo, was in King Fighter 99 in a Dreamcast version. King Fighter 11, he was a playable character. And he has simple inputs. Different story there. So you got Ryo as from Buriki 1. And of course, you got to parity it with Robert. That's why he looks different too. And then they add some new characters, such as Marco for Metal Slug, Cyber Wolf for King of Monsters. And like I said, Samurai Shodown characters, finally, Hamaru and Nakoruru. And the biggest one is Ashura from Samurai Shodown 64 is also back. And better gameplay, better mechanics, better concept behind it, and a lot of a more all-star game. Because this is what happened when you do an SNK all-star from SNK vs. Capcom Chaos. So, Kyo in his 99 getup, and then you're adding K, Shermie, like that. So, is it true that it is based on SNK vs. Capcom Chaos? To some extent, possibly, because they think, well, that game wasn't good. People basically talk negative about the game. Again, it is what it is. Obligation. So they decided to do an improved version, and that's why you got Neo Geo Battle Colosseum. Hopefully this game is going to be on Steam and the PlayStation console, but we'll just have to wait and see there. And of course, Capcom side, they did Capcom Fighting Gem or Capcom Fighting All-Star. Credit to Matt McMuscle for the story. It was based on Capcom All-Star for during the time when a lot of the SNK employee went to Capcom, yes, including Shinkero. As of right now, he is a Capcom artist, so props to that one. Anyway, yeah, so credit to Matt McMuscle. He did a video about that one. Gist of it is, they were trying to do a Capcom All-Star in a 3D engine, going to be something different. Unfortunately, the people behind it were former SNK. The game didn't do good. The 3D engine wasn't running, and the belief was that the majority of the people who work on the game did not have experience of doing 3D games, so they just scrapped that one instead. They just said, you know what, we got this asset from Capcom vs. SNK and other fighting games. Why not just put in here at the cut and paste? So they did a 2-on-2, and they just put in characters from Darkstalker, Red Earth, and 3 different Street Fighter. The boss is Pyro, hidden boss is Shinakuma, and of course, one of the new characters original is Ingrid, which is based on Capcom All-Star. I don't know what happened to the other two, and then the game was bad. So if you want to know more about that game, Mac McMuscle video, worth watching it in my opinion. So there you go, the backstory of SNK and Capcom's collaboration. And they need to do one. They did it. And then they did more if they wanted to. And then, of course, the future of those franchises, some good, some bad. Neo Geo Battle Colosseum was good. People enjoy it. Capcom Fighting Gem or Capcom All-Star, you name it. Yeah, it's a simple version of Capcom vs. SNK. They probably just needed something, and there you go. The closing for this one is, will Capcom do a Capcom vs. SNK collection? I know they will. I think they will. Kind of makes sense. And my theory is going to be this. It's going to be 4 games. 5 or 6 possibly if there's some negotiation, if it's successful. But chances are it's probably going to be 4. So I'm thinking for $40 stuff, it's going to be Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000, and then the expansion Capcom vs. SNK Pro that has Dan and Joe, and then Capcom vs. SNK 2 Mark of the Millennium 2001, and then as an added bonus, they're just going to shove in Capcom All-Star or Capcom Fighting Gem. And like I said, if the negotiation is successful, probably tricky, they'll just put in Capcom vs. SNK Chaos just for the heck of it. Even the one for the Neo Geo Pocket, because like I said, SNK vs. Capcom Match of the Millennium for the Neo Geo Pocket has an integration with Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000. Not Pro, from what I understand. Pro, they got rid of that feature. But again, who knows? Maybe they'll put in that prototype Capcom All-Star game just for funs and giggle. An incomplete game, but at least it's something. I'll be laughing they would do that. But the safe bet, I'm going to assume, if they're going to do a collection for Capcom vs. SNK, it's just probably going to be that 4 games. Like I said, Capcom vs. SNK Match of the Millennium 2000, Pro version, the sequel, and Capcom All-Star. We'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, there you go. More in-depth history of the collaboration and the games behind the history. What I know on the internet, and I talked to some people, it is what it is. Will they do a sequel? Just have to wait and see. Like I said, as of right now in 2024 and beyond, you got different people working the game. People are passionate. The executive are more passionate. And for whatever reason now, apparently Capcom are more approachable when doing collaboration. Marvel also as well, because at the time, with Nitsuma with Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Marvel was being hard, but of course, that's the time where Fox Marvel was still existing, and that they're trying to promote the MCU, but that's a different story there. We'll just have to wait and see. Kudos, a lot of this collaboration, and again, it is important because that means companies are willing once again to work with each other, because in the past, after Capcom vs. SNK 2, and SNK versus Capcom Chaos. Capcom really did not want to do collaboration. They felt that it's really not good for business. It is what it is. So anyway, there you go. With that, I'll see you guys later.